All right, we're back. All right, the whole idea behind this is differentiated and personalized instruction and assessment. The suggestions for these PD came out of one of 4 of the committees that met this summer, the one called Teaching and Learning, which a couple of you guys were on with me as well. And the other one that I was on was Social and Emotional Learning, but this topic is, it's my bag. It's what I care about. It's been a very primary focus for me for the last several years. Kind of started out with experimentation. What happens if we put the students in the driver's seat? What happens if you start including student voice and choice? What happens if you start creating a student-centered curriculum where you focus on essential questions and real student outcomes, but you kind of let them be a part of building the vehicle to get there. And the more that they see their own signature in that vehicle, the more relevant it's going to be to them, the more meaningful it's going to be to them, and the more impactful the learning is going to be. So I've actually done a bunch of different PD sessions that are kind of like this in style with my wife, Anastasia. You guys might have crossed her path as well. We also created a course on Nord's teacher site as well called the Student-Centered Curriculum Through Backwards Design, which runs like 4 times throughout the year. And any of you are welcome to join that as well if you want to jump in there. But anyway, so this is my jam, is the point. I really didn't know how many of you, my friends, were going to be here or how much you wanted to bring to the table and wanted to receive feedback about. So I'm just going to kind of use you guys as the sounding board here, and I want this time together to just be as helpful and useful to you as possible. Like I said, I think that there's great power in getting us all together to be able to look at what it is that we do and to really get some fresh eyes and some feedback and some pats on the back. And so that's what this is all about. Just to kick us off, I stuck a couple resources in the spreadsheet last night, which means none of you probably had a chance to see them. Just because I'm a big believer in transparency and sharing what it is that's going on in our worlds. So I linked them all. In the spreadsheet, I created like a new sort of resources column. And they're there for you if you want to check them out. Would it help everybody if I started the gears grinding by showing you what I've been up to? Would that be a good start? Okay, cool. I'm going to share then. So let me get this up and rolling here. Oh, I've got a lot of tabs open. I know you guys know what that's like. Okay. Sharing time. Sharing equals caring. Here we go.
Hey, Jeremy, I don't see the links.
On the spreadsheet where you got the link to the Zoom meeting?
Yeah,
No.
Jeremy, you know what? The PD that we were kind of told to add our Zoom links and our description to, that spreadsheet is different than the one that they sent out with this invitation.
I got it.
Want me to add it
And
for you right now, Jeremy? Copy. I can see both tabs. I can copy it to the other one for you now.
I mean, that'd be great. I just stuck the spreadsheet link in the chat. Is that available to everybody or is it closed to just us, Genevieve?
Which one?
The original spreadsheet, is that available?
Yeah, that was just like kind of behind the scenes, but the public one was different, but I'll move it over right now.
Mind?
Nope.
Thank you, my friend. So while she's doing that, I'll show you what it looks like on my end. Oh my. Glad you're here, Genevieve. Let's see here. All right, cool. So here's what yours is about to look like. Collapse here. Okay. And all right. So here's my line: individualized differentiated instruction through assessment design. Blah 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 blah. Here's the resources. This is what Genevieve is moving on over for me. These are just examples of how I've incorporated it into what I do. Like I said, it's really about focusing on student outcomes and really thinking of it in terms of backwards design, essential questions. What is it that I want my students to understand? What is it that I want them to be able to do at the end of this? And then allowing them to be a part of designing the vehicle. Admittedly, I teach subjects that really have a door that's open to those possibilities. I've been teaching global politics for 4 years, which, as you can imagine, has to be pretty malleable and adaptable. There's no like one point in time where you're like, here's global politics, and we're done. And so there's that one. And then last year I took over general psychology, and I really broke out of the textbook on that one. I really put my own stamp on it and made it my own, and instead made it a course about self-awareness and identity. And then this year I'm actually also taking over financial literacy, which is another thing that you can't really explore without thinking about what your role is and what your particular powers are within the world, within the system. So what do these look like? Global politics, I'll give you a quick run through. This was actually the final activity that I did with the kids this past spring. And it's an adaptation of an activity I created like 7-8 years ago. It's been on many different iterations. It's a lot of fun, actually. You know, if you guys are bored and you're nerdy like me, you might want to just try it out on yourself. So it looks like this. I really just start with concepts, abstract concepts, and I have the kids just kind of ranking them. And it starts off with these two, freedom and equality. Which one do you think is more important than the other? Now, just off the bat, does anybody just have an absolute definitive answer? Okay.
I'm not gonna lie, I probably missed you. My child started talking to me, and your question I missed. I apologize.
Not a problem. Not a problem. You have these here. All right. Well, the idea obviously is that it's not easy to choose between these two, right? Which one is more important than the other? So they kind of hem and haw over that, and then after they're done, you throw 2 more at them. Say, okay, which one of these is the most important, next important, next important, and next important? Freedom, equality, democracy, and justice. And of course, then, you know, they start. Now, they're not allowed to be like debating with each other yet. I want them to nail down their list. And so then I just really throw them into the deep end and say, okay, rank these. Now, what they end up with is they end up with a list of their own, you know, 12 terms. And from there, then I open it up and I start asking them questions about, you know, well, why did you organize these the way that you did? Why might someone organize them differently? What values might you add to this list? They're now thinking abstractly about what it is that they identify as abstract values within their world. And now they're also being forced to consider multiple perspectives. And of course, this is a step towards, you know, maybe developing the sense of the other, developing any, you know, kind of sense of empathy, if I could go that far. The second step to this, once they have their list, is now we open it up for some debate. So what were your top 3? What were your bottom 3? And I let them go at it for a while, which is a lot of fun, by the way. Watching them sort of tear each other apart over this. It's fun to see where the students land on these ideas. And then from there, I had them create their own state. Their own political, economic, social systems based upon these values. Now, of course, what you see I'm doing is with each of these individual kids, I'm having them recreate the abstraction of global politics. And then with the final piece, where is it? No, not that one. Not that one. This one. Then they were forced to create an essential question and sort of try to explore that utilizing their own state. And we sort of came together as our own mock UN for my fellow Star Wars fanatics out there. That's the Galactic Senate. I use that as a model instead. You're welcome. And you know, we use this as a method through which to explore the abstraction, a method through which to measure their greater understanding of the subject, yes, but even more so where their role is in the world and how it is that they perceive the world and how that might match up with the perceptions of others, which is really what I cared about. That's really what I wanted them to come away with. So I'll pause there for a second. Any questions, comments, concerns, clarifications?
I like how they have the opportunity to just do it individually and then come together and like kind of, I guess, argue their point or argue why they feel that their top ones are theirs. And it's nice because it opens up that discussion and it can be like a friendly debate amongst the kids, the students.
And even because it's in a political spirit, to think like how would we be able to work cooperatively even with our differing values is an interesting caveat too. But thank you. Yes.
I also really like how you go from a general concept down to more specific, into getting them to really think and dive deeper into that understanding of that information.
That was the idea. And of course, this is the capstone after 2 years of studying it. But at the same time, I would do this at the beginning and then be sort of like a thing that you would revisit at the end as well. Start conceptual, maybe case study things out, but then always come back to the conceptual, because that's the part that matters. That's the part that adapts and changes to any given situation. Those are the greater understandings of these relationships.
The other thing super powerful with this is there are so many layers. So, you know, you have form an opinion, somebody else has an opinion for another reason, and then you say, oh, I never thought of that. So, you know, multiple layers give them more awareness of, you know, it's complicated to be a grown-up living in the grown-up world.
Is it? Yeah, it is.
There are days.
It is.
I like how this gets them to see like within themselves. Like I think a lot of times the kids are obviously influenced a lot by their parents and like what their parents' beliefs are like politically, and then this gets them to like a chance to like actually see what they feel inside and where like what resonates with them mostly.
It's fun for me to tell them how my views, because I do it with them too. And it's fun to tell them too how my views have evolved or progressed or changed or whatever over the years as I've experienced more as well, and as the world around us has changed more. You're always reacting to the environment that you have, and so that those make for fun conversations too. So I think you guys get the spirit of it, and I think you'll see a similar thing reflected in psychology. So, like I said, I took over general psych this year, and unlike Sarah, who is a psychology master and teaches AP Psych like a pro, she's prepping them for an external exam. With general psychology, I was kind of just given a playground. And that's how I used it. So I centered general psychology on 3 questions. Who am I? Why am I? And what is my role in the world? Was there a question? Did I cut someone off? No? Okay. Who am I? Why am I? And what is my role in the world? And, you know, of course, with psychology, you have so many different opportunities. Here's a theory. You know, here is a particular experiment. Here is a concept. Now apply it to yourself. And that was really the model for pretty much everything that we did. But here's where the through line is. Same sort of spirit that's behind this global politics assessment that you see in front of you is, where is it? Sorry, let me see here. So many things open. This guy, the ultimate selfie. So they had one summative that they just kept revisiting throughout the year. And it was called the ultimate selfie. And the idea was then to be able to choose the medium through which they wanted to present their understandings, and then give it to me in whatever form that they wanted to. Now, we did some brainstorming as to what that could look like. Some students tried different media and didn't like what it was that they were doing, and so they scrapped it and they moved on. Some students kept the same medium throughout the whole year, and they were left with a profile at the end of the year of everything that makes up who they are based upon everything that we learned. I kept a list of topics here, and you guys will have access to all of this. You can dig as deep as you want to or not. That, you know, these are the topics that we've covered since the last assessment. This is what I want to see represented in your understanding, but how you do it is up to you. I gave them a couple of helpful links on how to use certain media if they wanted to, but if they wanted to do something else entirely, I worked with them on the side. But the point is, they just kept coming back to this ultimate selfie. They were assessed on the same concepts over and over and over again. We looked at models of what these meant. We scored the first 2 batches together so that we could all meet together somewhere where our interpretation of what these concepts mean are. And this went on and on and on until the end of the year where they did the final selfie. And that was when they came back to the conceptual essential questions: who am I, why am I, and what is my role in the world? And they were allowed to use anything from this vast profile that they built throughout the entire year to try to tackle those questions, now based upon what it is that you have explored about yourself, that you've learned about yourself. How would you respond to these? So that's what I did in psychology. And of course, we're talking about 2 different content bases, but I think you guys see the complementary spirit, at least in what I was trying to accomplish with these. So I'll open it up to you guys.
I want to come take your class. Are teachers allowed to start taking cool classes in high school? Because I didn't have that. My psych class was not that exciting, man. I already told Tommy, I'm like, I'm a little jealous, man. You know, these cool classes going at North Broward, man.
Thank you. That's awesome.
You're so right. I remember my psych class learning all about sleep, like, and how sleep affects your whole psyche. And I was like, that's all I took away from the class. This is so awesome.
Sleep is important.
Yeah. But I like the idea that it's the selfie, because I think it directly connects to the students and who they are right now. So as soon as they see it, they're already like, that's their buy-in. They're like, oh, this is it. And then it gets them to really, truly think and dive deeply about who they are, which then in the end makes them a better person. That's awesome.
I like how you do it for the whole year. So like they have a chance to like go back, and then really it's like a reflection over a period of time, I guess, so to speak. But what's nice about it is it does show them like how they've grown over even such a short period of time.
That was the intention.
It also sounds to me like it builds on the work that they do, where they're digging deep in the personal branding. You know, they're looking at it in a digital format. Who am I? And what do I represent? What do I want people to remember about me? And this kind of builds on that idea.
I have a quick question. Do you usually give the students the, I see that it's in a Google Doc. Are they completing the information in the Google Doc, and then do they upload it to you somehow, or how are you having them, how have you had them do it in that process?
So this is really just meant to be sort of the home base, the template for what the ask is, the link to whatever resource documents they need. And then of course it has the rubric through which we can communicate. Now what it is that they choose to do, if it's digital, chances are there's going to be able to be an active link that they can stick there in that second blank right here that I'm clicking on. So this would be like, here, what medium did I choose? And then this would be the link to whatever it is that they did. And they chose any vast array of things. But, you know, I actually had a couple kids choose to do physical scrapbooks too. And that was pretty cool because they wanted to have like a finished, like physical book at the end of the year. So that's how this worked. It's not like a Google Doc that they have to complete necessarily. It's just sort of like a nesting spot so that they're all in one place, if that makes any sense. So Genevieve has asked how this reflects backwards design. You know, like I said at the beginning, you're talking about trying to center what you're doing first and foremost on student outcomes, and allowing your exploration of a topic or a piece of content or a subject to be guided by essential questions. Of course, essential questions by definition should be infinitely faceted, should be approachable from any perspective, shouldn't have definitive answers, should be able to adapt to whatever content, context, or environment you're looking at. And so when I conceived of general psych, these three questions here are what I used as the guiding forces for everything they did through the trimester. Now, beyond that, then of course you're getting into, okay, well, what is the summative embodiment of the understandings that I want them to take away? Well, you're looking at it here. We've had formative processes through which they have engaged with all of these topics on here, and methods by which they've received feedback on all of this. But you'll notice even here on the summative, for rubrics, I actually have the students score themselves and provide feedback as to why it is they think they deserved what they did. And this becomes an ongoing conversation back and forth as they choose to reassess, as they choose to revisit. Here are some things that I think you did very well, and here are some things that I think you could develop further. And then they go back, they look at it, and then they develop it further, and then they ask me to take a look at it again. This is just an ongoing, sort of conversation. And then after every piece of this, we celebrate what it is that the students had come up with, but we also open it up to a reflective piece of what worked about this and what didn't. What came across clearly, and what do you think I could refine further, or maybe we need to revisit? And so this is where backwards design all comes in. That's how this model was ultimately produced. Now, you guys were all extremely complimentary to me, probably more so than I deserve, and I really do appreciate it. But I also wanted to just pull us all together into this space so that you guys all had an opportunity to share what you were thinking about doing and what you would like to pursue, and maybe get some feedback from everybody. So if it's okay with you guys, I would like to open the floor, and then you guys will have access to these things. And if you want to continue having a conversation with me at any other point in time about what it is that I'm doing, I'd be more than happy to engage with that. But I don't want this to be all about me, and I don't want this to be celebratory about what I'm doing. I want this to benefit all of you. So I'll open the floor to you guys. I don't know, any clarifying questions or concepts or things it is that you are currently working on that you would like to share with us, or you would like some feedback on. Take it away, Kate.
Well, Jeremy, as you know, because we did last summer the project-based learning, and that for me, I had struggled a lot with finding different ways to make math more
For 8 minutes.
personable, I guess, so to speak. So for me, coming to something like this, I try to find a different way for me, because I know that everything, especially with math, should be more individualized and differentiated. As much as math is one way and one thing, I do know that my students don't all learn at the same pace, and that they learn differently or at different times. So the big thing that I had brought in, which was nice through the virtual learning, I think it gave me more of an opportunity to do more projects for the students that were a little bit more long term. But I actually was able to connect with my students on a whole different level and see what they were into and what interested them. So I find even though this is not directly related in my wheelhouse, what you're showing, obviously, it helps me out tremendously, because I can see using this in a different way, because I think that I can use something of when you think about math, what words first come to mind, or things like that, or give them words that are related to math and which ones mean the most when you're dealing with it, things like that. It's just nice to see it.
So what were some things that you experimented with this year that felt really good?
Oh, okay. So we did a few projects within the virtual platform. We did a project where the students actually had to take data, and they had to interview 5 different families based on how many days they were doing virtual learning or virtual working from home. And then they had to take all of that data and create find the mean, the median, the mode, the range, and then they had to graph all the data within a spreadsheet. And then what we did is, after they did that, the next time that we had our face-to-face class, we put them in a group of 5, and the 5 groups came together and took their 25 family sets of data and then created one big spreadsheet off of all of the data together. And then we had the kids do create a probability game, and whether it would be from a casino or something you would see at a carnival, because carnival is all about probability and chance. So it was nice to see it. Like, kids were very creative, and it worked whether there were kids that were not around. Like, I had some kids that went back home, like that were maybe in China or Chile, but they were all still able to work with each other because they're working within a document together. It was nice. It was fun.
Were you able to get sort of reflective feedback from the students after you tried those things out?
Oh yeah, we did. I did like within Zoom, I did like the polls and stuff like that. The only thing that stinks about the polls is like, it's visual right then and there, but you can't save it or go back to it, which at least I don't think you can, because I couldn't find a way. I ended up having to screenshot some of it, but it did help me because was able to ask the kids, like, some kids of course are going to not like it and it's not going to meet what they want. They just want like straight instruction or straight math because that's what they like. But then it was good for the creative kids who aren't really into math, because I mean, let's be honest, probably 1% or less of my students are mathematicians.
I'm reminded of a point that and my wife, in her entrepreneurial studies class, whenever she has the students rate each other, whether peer feedback, she asks them to rank something 1 to 5. And the 1 to 5 is completely arbitrary. What do those numbers mean? Kind of reminds me of the teacher-student surveys, that we sometimes do.
I did a few Google Forms throughout the process, so like to see where they were at, and I had kids even in the Google Forms tell me like their personal views about working with peers and things like that. And sometimes they were a little harsh, but thankfully they were private. But sometimes like they had a reflection on their Google Slides that they had to do. Each student had to create their own reflection piece based off working with each other in a group, their dislikes and likes about work, not about their peers, but like working in groups in general, or like even what they thought about the project. So it was kind of cool to see that.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly where I was going, was that you establish this numerical value. That's not the part that matters. The part that matters is that it then gets the gears going so that they can talk about what they thought about something, how they felt about something, and that peer-to-peer feedback is something that's such a critical skill. We're not very good at guiding them into doing. We're not really good at receiving it ourselves. But yeah, thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Christine, what do you got, my friend?
I was just thinking about what Shannon was saying and what you discussed in like how the students were doing a choice of different things that interest them. And I think like on making something like that and then tying that into the global goals. So with self and like thinking about the self and how you feel about yourself, and then tying that somehow into the global goals of how students feel in other countries about themselves, or the numbers and the math, what you were referring to, and finding some type of way to tie that in. So that's something that I'm looking towards using this year more, is trying to find some type of a concept that the students are interested in, and then really showing them using different pictures and visuals of other places throughout the world that where they can make those connections in a broader view, as well as specific to them, and how that is similar and different, like compare and contrasting with that. So just a thought.
Like, you feel this way, how might this person feel, and why? What might be important to them? Is that,
Right.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a cool
Right.
first steps into empathy.
Like a perception of, well, like how we talked about this past whole year, they talked about housing and like where different places are throughout the world, and what children feel are most necessary for themselves, but then taking those like student interests and like pulling it to them, that way they go through those and say, well, how might a child in this place feel? What do you think their is most important for them? Kind of like having that. That's what I meant by that. Like having a. I like that idea.
And then even taking it further and being like, well, what is home?
Yeah.
Home ability. A physical.
Well, it doesn't have to be home. It could be anything, you know, so.
That's just it. Then you're
Yeah,
abstraction, which is pushing critical thinking, which
right,
or to other people's perspectives. That's
right.
really cool. Anybody want to jump in there? Or bring up something else?
Jeremy, I don't know, I'm curious to like ask you about the sort of the nuts and bolts of it all. Like in terms of, is it built into a classroom routine? Do you formulate different ways in which you're forming the assessments in terms of it's individual, this time we're going to share out, hey, I just want to check in a little bit with you, like changing it up, or is it like team based?
I think it's raining somewhere.
Sorry, Tammy. I don't know what's happening at Tammy's house, but I hope she's okay. So Lynn, sorry, just clarification. So do you mean, does it move from individual to collaborative to group to, is that what you mean?
Yeah, like there's this through line of like individualized, you know, thinking but is it like part of a classroom routine? Like how, you know, the expectations of the students, like checking in, are you just the kind of the nuts and bolts of like?
I will admit that taking an approach like that to a curriculum requires a complementary environment. It requires a complementary set of relationships with the kids. And so sometimes it takes a little bit of breaking down at the beginning of the year that, you know, there isn't particularly one accepted answer. That I'm on a learning journey with them. That I'm more of a guide or a mentor to the side rather than, you know, the sage on the stage sort of approach. A lot of that has to be developed. And then from there, it takes on sort of its organic form in the way that I do it. But of course, in terms of assessment, you ultimately need to be able to assess an individual's skills and their understanding and where they're at. However, dipping in and out of staying within an individual bubble and then being able to contribute your own perspectives actually opens up everybody else's critical thinking skills as well, because now they have to take into account your particular perspective when answering something of their own. So it becomes a mixed community in which I can also individually assess where everybody is at through their understandings of the abstract concepts, if that makes any kind of sense. Now, in something like global politics, that takes a pretty amorphous shape. Sometimes, for example, we'll all do a case study together. You know, for example, we got back from holiday break in January, and we were doing something completely different. Actually, kind of escapes me right now what we were doing. But when we got back, I don't know if you remember, that was when the assassination of Soleimani happened in Iran, and the kids were scared, thought we were going to war. So I was like, all right, well, scrap that. Let's talk about Iran. And I put it up as some concept, and the kids, I gave them all avenues that they could explore about this concept, be it the governmental structure, be it the economic structure, be it this piece of historical context or this piece of historical context, their relationships with this state, how they are on human rights, how they are with their environmental standards, any kinds of regulations on industry, for example. All of these possibilities. And the kids were able to choose what lane most spoke to them. And so through doing that, they were able to dive into the research, show me their abilities to process what it was they were finding, find appropriate pieces of information, and then synthesize that into their own observations. But ultimately, they're all coming together to create this larger mosaic that's a much more complicated picture of the bigger concept. So it's both individual and it's done as a community. However, it's still personalized and differentiated in that sense. And it allows me to have a touch point with every single individual, what it is that they're engaging with and how I can push them further. Did the example help a little bit? Cool. Anybody else want to share what it is they're working on, or? And Kim's parenting again. Genevieve and Julie.
I was totally panting again. I was describing a haul over area and context clues and all sorts of cool stuff. But then, being a good teacher mom, I was making connections to when him and I went paddleboarding last week.
Did I see him wearing a tie?
Oh, yeah, he was just messing around in the house, and he created like a ship. So he has like a pirate. He had a pirate thing going on. I think he was a ship cruise captain going. He has a hat from when we were on a plane. He does a lot of fun things when mom says, I have to go Zoom and learn stuff.
That's awesome.
We ate lunch in there.
We did. We ate lunch in there.
It's like
breakfast burritos.
It's like a real cruise ship. She has her own big cruise
Yeah.
ship.
Yeah, he literally made like a cruise ship, but there's a bed in there. There's a place for the dog, which is his little captain
And we're
side.
gonna pretend to jump off the boat, and the boat's actually inside, so we're gonna go snorkeling inside the pool.
We're very thankful we have a pretty large playroom because it's.
Yay!
This
Oh, goodness.
of near the end of the year, our Zoom trimester. I forget how it came up, but somehow I ended up on a Zoom call with Lori Barbag's son, Joshy.
Oh my God, he's such a trip.
Hilarious. And we ended up watching like how to construct lightsaber videos for like an hour and a half.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yep, I could see that with Josh Dark. Yeah, all of them. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's.
She left and came back, and she was like, "Are you guys still going?" I was like,
Yeah. But now we're gonna have lifesavers. I mean, hello.
I'm sorry. I was like, no, it's cool. I'm learning a lot.
I have a very different perspective on building and designing. Oh yeah. Oh, so much fun.
So cool. So
Yeah. But no, I was just telling him, I'm like, I have something I want to share. Hold on. And that's when you're like, I think Kim is parenting. It's like a perfect segue. I had two really big takeaways. Your first one, that you had them choosing the different words. I could very easily imagine me doing that with like some of the older kids using the scientific method. Like, because they need to know why there's important parts. Like, why can't you mess up a variable? Because it messes up your whole experiment. And they get it, but I don't know how deeply they get it. And I feel like if I chose certain words and have them put, well, out of the whole steps, what is the most important step? The first, the end, the middle, why? And then have them create part of it. I think they would get a richer feel for why the steps of the method are so important. And then I think I'm going to redesign the 8th grade. They do a balloon car. And I'd like to really do a backwards design and have the kids come away with the ending. Like, this is it. What is my purpose? What do I need? And how do I backstep that one to understand the Newton's laws that allow them to get the best car? That, and I saw a video on a mousetrap car the other day with a new video stream that Tommy and I are addicted to. Mark Rober, I think it is. Oh,
They made a Jello pool.
he made a Jello pool. He did elephant's toothpaste that exploded out of his own pool. I think they live somewhere they must close down their pool once a year, like up north or something. Full elephant's toothpaste up out of the pool and all over the side yard.
Kim, when is your class being held? I want to take class in your home.
I was just thinking, I was like, first, what's elephant toothpaste?
Oh, elephant's
What? You don't know what elephant's toothpaste?
Now you're going to have to Zoom later with Tommy so he can do it with you, because I have it in the garage.
And a Jello pool, I'm sure my bearded dragon would love to swim in that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah.
I want to swim in it too.
Right. Oh, so much fun. Yeah, no, we did once. We wanted to try at the lower school when I was there. We were going to do something fun for PE one day for the end of it and have the kids try and do oobleck in a kiddie pool to prove that you could walk across it to talk about the two. And I'm like, time to do that one soon too. Yeah. Oh, he's leaving us now. Bye.
So that got me thinking about the writing process. I teach reading and writing to struggling students. And, you know, the writing process I've always taught in order, but kids are always fighting me on it. Why can't I just write it and be done with it, right? So help me process that. How would that look if we talked about the importance of the steps in order and what would happen if they were out of order?
That's interesting. So I guess the first thing that I thought of was that when Kim was describing her takeaways with the scientific method is that it goes back to that essential question concept. You know, how is it that we construct an essential question that is infinitely, you know, revisited, that you can see through different contexts and environments and from different perspectives. And so an example of being bogged down in the objective or the concept itself would be like recite the scientific method.
Yeah.
You know, something along those lines.
Memorize it, match the vocab.
Roll out. However, the larger understanding that they really need to be able to conceive of and that they need to be able to reapply over and over again is that these things operate according to rules. They are mechanical. It's a machine. Each piece affects each other. And when they can see the scientific understanding in that light, that's something that they'll see across all of the different scientific fields, that once you establish this principle, this idea, this cog in the machine, you have to know that it's there at all times. Otherwise, the machine doesn't work.
Yep.
And I think that might actually be the common thread there for Dory, is that in science that might lend itself to to a very quick understanding, but of course when you're dealing with literature, that's the tough part with grammar, right? You're like, well, we want you to be fluid and expressive and interpretive and all that. Oh, but this part's unforgiving. until you know all the rules, and then you can break them and you can be a great writer. But
Yeah.
Is if they think of it, I don't know, what if you really approached it from almost a scientific standpoint and be like, these are the rules. A subject.
You'd have to conduct an experiment of comparing a piece you write on the fly to a piece you go back over and over and over again, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or present like a piece of writing as a machine and be like, does this work? Does this machine work, or is it missing parts? Or are there parts where there shouldn't be parts? That could be kind of cool. I don't know. I'm spitballing here, guys. You're
I like that idea, though. I think they could look at it and they could really say, like, well, why does this not work? And then they can discuss, well, I don't like this part of it, I don't like that part of it, and they really go down to it. And every time they get into it, they might naturally come up with some of the same vocabulary words that give you those steps.
Right.
Well, I don't like the way that sounds. Well, why not? I know when kids mess up, like in my learning spec, if they have a run-on sentence, I always like to read it without breathing. And they're like, oh. I'm like, yeah. I had to take a really deep breath for that one because it was like 9 sentences long and there was no punctuation. I'm like, oh. And they're like, oh, there's something wrong with that. I'm like, you think? But if they had that, like, almost like you said, you enjoyed watching the kids like debate part of it, I think they could have a really healthy debate about the different parts of the writing process and why some work and some don't.
There's something about creating that space, a space in which, and this is a tough one to accomplish, but a space in which it's okay to fail, a space in which it's okay to be vulnerable. And a big part of that is modeling it too. Like I said, I'm a big part of, I'm a lifelong learner as well. I don't know everything. That's not the point. That's not why I'm here with you right now. I'm here to help guide your thinking, your ability to think and your ability to perceive. And once you start to allow those vulnerabilities and admit when you're wrong and admit when you don't know something and jump in with them and create the models that you're asking them to create, it does wonders for really turning it into a space where you're all sharing in this exploration together. And there's no judgment about whether or not you've created something perfect or whether or not you've made a mistake. If anything, it makes it better. It makes the environment better because we all get to engage with it. We all get to learn from it. Hold on, let me put my soapbox away.
I like that soapbox though. Yeah, in science, I'm always like, no, it's a beautiful thing about the subject. We're always messing up. The conclusion could be right or wrong. You just walk away with knowledge.
Exactly, especially in science, right?
Yeah. And my subject, I think, is easier for them to be like, oh, and then it's great to be like, well, but isn't that like that everywhere though? Every time you make a mistake, you fall, you fail, you mess up, you've learned what you did wrong as long as you're open to seeing it.
Right.
Thank you, Christina, for putting in the elephant's toothpaste thing that was in the chat now. So now Jeremy could see it. If not, I'm going to have to Zoom and send you a video later. I'll have to do it with Tommy this week now, I'm sure.
That's a house in there. There's a house.
We're not doing it in our pool, though. We don't close our pool down, kid. I live up north where they put it away for a couple of months. We swim in ours all the time.
Looks like we've got time to dive in with one more. If anybody's got anything else to.
One quick question. I know you said, like, you talked a lot about the differentiation piece of it, where students are individually getting, are thinking about their interests and what they're interested in. So that brings that individualized component to it. As far as differentiation goes, what are some of the things that you do in addition to that individualized piece of it?
Individualization for differentiation is a big piece of the puzzle. But please don't misunderstand. I feel like differentiation is almost one of those holy grails for us, right? That you're always trying to reach for, especially when you go back to like its earlier conceptions with McTighe, for example, and what have you. Their ideas of differentiation were like everybody's assessed and valued the same way, but you're choosing your own difficulty levels based upon, super, super complicated processes potentially. So this is my approach to it, is by allowing the students to design what elements of the curriculum it is that they are engaging with, and then allowing me to have an individual touch point for each one of them as to what it is that they have chosen to focus on, and therefore where I can push them further. And for each individual student, that means different things, right? It could mean adjusting difficulty levels for sources, for global politics and for psychology. I locate their sources, or I teach them to locate sources, but leveling of reading. Sometimes it has to do with mixing up one-on-one exploration with them of their topic, where you don't necessarily give them the answers to what it is that they're looking for, but perhaps they require a little bit more guidance, a little bit more of a nudge as to maybe this is something that you can consider. Have you thought about that? And then sort of send them down the rabbit's hole. And ultimately what you end up assessing, like I showed you guys with the rubric, I have that feedback loop where they are constantly evaluating where it is that they're at on the skills that I want them to be developing, and I'm constantly giving them feedback and an endless opportunity to keep going back and revisiting it. And so there, of course, you're also building in a critical understanding of, first of all, what skills it is that I'm trying to demonstrate, but also how I can keep improving on those things. And so all of those things, yes, they're individualized, but I would argue that also makes it a differentiated approach to the curriculum.
Oh, no, I totally agree. I just was curious about that. And then as far as the rubric goes, because you're giving constant feedback, which is, what the whole purpose of learning is, right? You're getting feedback and then you're growing from that feedback to improve. Do you give different types of rubrics? Or like for the students that you said that there's some students that need that higher level, resources, or students that maybe need different types of resources, or that choice piece that you're saying, do the rubrics end up changing?
So there's a couple different ways to approach this. A great question. Couple different ways to approach this. Of course, the way that I showed you today is, of course, to present the rubric, but then actually walk through the rubric with the students, have them engage with the rubric themselves. The reactions that you get from the kids when you have them engage with the rubric themselves and then share out together as a group is like, oh, wow. It's a metacognitive awareness, that they're not really used to. But there's a lot of different ways to do this. I've had situations where I've created assessments with the kids and had them create a rubric with me. So what are some things that you would like me to assess you on? What do you think we should look for? What do you think is fair? With the global politics kids, I've had scaled rubrics. And so we'll do a case study activity, for example, and I'll just focus on one skill and be like, this is what we're going to focus on this time. Get some feedback, get a cycle of that going, and then maybe do the next activity down the road, add another skill to it. And be like, remember this one? Now we're going to add this one to it as well. And then by the time you get to the end of the year, you've amassed this, hopefully short list of skills that you've given an extensive focus to. And they know all the steps of the way in which they've been learning how to build that skill set. So there's a lot of different ways that you do it, but much like my curriculum design, I think any opportunity that you have to be able to pull the student's voice and awareness into what it is that you're doing, the stronger it is, the more relevant it is, the more effective it is, in my opinion.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you.
Of course, you're welcome. I want to respect your time, guys. I wanted to go until 2 o'clock. I know that I think Leah Wolf's is starting at 2. I don't know if you guys were planning on jumping onto that, but I don't want to take a chunk out of her time. Feel free to reach out to me. I mean, I can always keep a conversation with you guys going one-on-one. My wife and I are always happy to jump on and have PD conversations. It's like I said, it's our breath of normalcy amidst all of this. But I want to thank all of you guys sincerely for coming out and being part of this sort of hive mind. Take care of yourselves, please. Stay safe. We'll get through this. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Jeremy. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.